Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another video, and here's the situation. Back in September of 2024, I made a post on Twitter theorizing that falling up by KrmaL is a level about death. But then, in April of this year, there was a quote tweet that somewhat confirms this theory, and attached is a screenshot in the replies with a Discord message from KrmaL saying so. But what's interesting is that his other levels are mentioned, saying that he was thinking of linking them together to make some sort of story. Now, I don't know if this is actually a real screenshot, but considering the date as well as some levels not named correctly, I can somewhat believe it. However, there isn't any official say of how these levels are connected, so as a big fan of storytelling and KrmaL levels, I thought I'd give it a shot and try to connect some KrmaL levels together. Before I start my game theory, there are levels that are excluded for one reason or another, and those levels are Alive, Invisible Deadlock, Conical Depression, Phobos, Don't Rate This Level, Manix, Elite Sea Rebirth, Valor, Hungry Humphrey, Low Death, Steel Gear, and High. Some of these are pretty obvious why they aren't included, like some are joke levels and the others are not even his levels. Valor isn't included because I'm pretty sure it's just an all-American mega collab that was made because of Pokemon Go. Same goes with Steel Gear, but that one is just because it's an old level. High isn't included because I legitimately couldn't find a connection with the others that are included. I'm sure some of you can, but for me, I couldn't. So that leaves us with the timeline of Rearmed, Lit Fuse, Falling Up, Heartbeat, Black Blizzard, and XO. I will say that a lot of these are mere speculation and even a bit of a stretch on some parts, but I'll promise you that it'll be somewhat more cohesive than the FNAF timeline. And with all of that being said, let's start the video with the first part of the story.
I am unarmed, I lay my weapon down free.
Rearmed is probably the hardest level to try and deduce in this entire video. In a screenshot that I mentioned before, KrmaL states that Rearmed represents someone's beginning, and already we see a problem. Because 1, this level is a remake of Unarmed, which was an old level, and it doesn't strike as having some sort of meaning at first. 2, the lyrics of the song didn't really mean someone's beginning at first and lean more towards someone's trust and relationship, so now I'm even more stumped. And as a result, I think Rearmed is where I take a bit of a stretch the most, so bear with me for a sec here. The first factor I want to talk about is how the level feels. It starts out very melancholic and almost calm feeling, with the song being more melodic in the first half of the level. To tie this in the theme of someone's beginning, think of it as the first time you were being born. You don't really have a grasp on what's happening around you, and your mind is just full of curiosity. So starting off life, you just wander around learning new things without any worry in the world and zero knowledge of how bad things would come. That is until you get to the second half of the level where everything feels more intense. The way I interpret the second half of the level is like this. Everything felt like it was moving too fast, and so you don't really know what to do in life. Everything felt confusing, scary, and intense. You're just getting a taste on what life has to offer, and your body, your mind, your soul has a bad reaction on how it'll think it will go through this very confusing time in your life, and the colors that's flashing represents everything that's happening in this time period. The second factor I want to talk about is actually the lyrics of the song. Now I know I said that the lyrics of the song got me stumped for a bit because it didn't seem like it fit the theme, but I think I can somewhat relate it to someone's beginning. At first, you might think the lyrics is talking about someone that is in a relationship, more specifically a romantic relationship, ensuring that they can put their trust into their lover. However, for the context of this level, we can somewhat twist it around, and instead of talking about the relationship between lovers, it's instead about the dynamic between a child and their guardian, aka their parents. And the lyrics still represent someone's trust for one another, because as a child, you rely on your guardian to really guide you to what life has to offer. This is perfectly represented in the lyrics, I lay my weapon down for you, either pick me up or you can shoot me down. You are my pilot, please don't let me drown. Because once again, you heavily rely on your guardian to really guide you into the person you are, and realistically, they can either help you on your first steps or just neglect you entirely. And followed up with the lyric, but I'm in army when I'm with you, cause when you pick me up you never let me down, you are my captain in these waters now. emphasizing it more that you rely on your guardian to help you understand the world around you. And when you get to the job, you're not speaking to your guardian again, as in this time period, you kinda learn how to be independent yourself, which is why, as I said before, this part of the level is at the point in life where you feel overwhelmed by what life has to offer, because you're not used to doing things yourself. You're really only used to rely on your guardian guiding you through thick or thin, but now you're on your own. You have to figure things out yourself. And time just feels like it comes by too quickly. And at the end of the level, everything fades to black again, which perfectly segments into the next part of our story, Lit Fuse. In the screenshot, KrmaL describes Lit Fuse, albeit named Explosion, as someone in their heyday. Now this is represented in the fact that Lit Fuse is his best level. I'm kidding, but the message here is a lot clearer than it is on Rearmed. We start out quietly, as after all of the shenanigans that happen, we can finally calm down as we get more accustomed to how life works, as we are now a much more independent person. I said in the Rearmed speculation that the flashing colors represent all of the things that's happening in your life, which at that time felt really overwhelming. In Lit Fuse, those colors do come back, but now we see it in a more calm manner as we now mature more as time goes on. And due to that, we now know to try and take our time with certain things so that we're not overwhelmed like we were back when Rearm was taking place. This is why the level is pretty slow paced at first, as we now know how to take things slow for a bit. And as the level progresses, these colors become more and more prominent, but unlike back in Rearm where we feel overwhelmed by these kind of things, we actually blend in with the colors as they are now part of our everyday lives. One thing that I realized while trying to compromise the storyline is that color is a highly important part on making the story work, and rainbow is one of the most prominent one, as I think that the rainbow represents life in itself, as it's a collection of colors in one. So in a way, it represents life, as life is a collection of experiences into one, with each color of the rainbow representing a different experience you had in life. And then we finally get to the drop. However, unlike Rearm where the drop felt intense and almost overwhelming, in Lit Fuse it is seen in a much more positive light, as once again we are now more accustomed by what life has to offer, and instead of being overwhelmed by it, we actually learn to finally enjoy from it. As the drop in Lit Fuse is noticeably a lot more cleaner than the one in Rearm, where at first glance it looks a bit messy. The abundance of the color white can be a sign that we are finally at peace with our current situation, as well as the color white is commonly associated with peace. But the point of Lit Fuse mostly is that we're finally at peace with figuring out how life works as we learn to take things slow and take our time with it and learn how to appreciate life in itself. Now, the next level chronologically is Heartbeat, but we're actually gonna go through Falling Up first. Falling Up's story is a lot more clearer than the other two, as there's now an actual theme with some of the parts of the level. We first start off with this cheery atmospheric part with a nice warm color for the background and some nice cloudy structuring. But immediately after that, we're thrown into the real world where we wander around in the city in the nighttime, as the part before it was merely just a dream. Falling Up is where our story starts to slow down, as now that we're more grown up, our heydays are over and now we're stuck back into reality of our world. We're not so jarred as we were back in Rearmed, but it's clear that we've gotten so used to what life has to offer that instead of being overwhelmed by it, we're just bored or maybe even depressed. We're not young and energetic anymore like we were in Lit Fuse, and instead we're now stuck in a dead-end 9-to-5 job. There's nothing exciting in life. All we can do really is just work and go back to our apartment. But then suddenly we're gonna be hit with something unexpected when we get closer to the drop of the level. But before we actually go there, we need to take a quick detour to Heartbeat first. In the screenshot, Heartbeat was mentioned as representing death, and Falling Up represents the afterlife. And while I do agree with that sentiment, I do kinda wanna twist things up a bit, and here's my interpretation. Falling Up's first half tells the story of our day-to-day life, but with an extra twist that we have some sort of health problem and we're in the process of our health declining as we progress through the level. Heartbeat is the process of our health declining, so in our timeline, I'd like to imagine that heartbeat takes place in the middle of falling up. Heartbeat's theme is pretty obvious, it's literally just our heart, like the organ in itself. And in the context of our story, it's a heart that is declining, which is very evident in the wave part where KrmaL used the wave patterns as the patterns of a heart monitor, which is alarmingly going on an inconsistent speed, possibly hinting that we're experiencing some sort of heart attack. And in fact, I know the extended version of the song is released way after the level, but at the end of the extended version of Heartbeat, we hear a heart monitor going flatline, so hey, just saying. And after the events of Heartbeat, we cut back to Falling Up, where it first fades to black, and now you're in the afterlife with the jaw possibly representing the process of you ascending to, well, heaven. As when you're ascending to the place up above, you're not really rising up, you're falling up. And the second drop represents you looking down from the world you once lived in, represented by the fact that it's a stormy part, as you now arrive to the peaceful place of heaven, represented by the typical usage of clouds in heaven imagery. And while the rainbow at first might represent like an actual rainbow, but as I said before, color is an important aspect to try and make this whole thing make sense. And as I've said, rainbow represents the experiences that we've had in our life. So the rainbow here is us reminiscing of our experience in life back on earth as we now reside in our new place in heaven, where we can now rest in peace. And that's where our journey ends, but wait a minute, if this is where the story ends, then where does Black Blizzard and XO come in? Well, that's where I come to theorize that Black Blizzard and XO are alternate endings. Let me explain what I mean, starting with Black Blizzard. This section of the video is gonna be like really short, but you know how at the end of Falling Up, we eventually go to heaven? Well, Black Blizzard is the alternate ending where we end up down under, hell, due to our actions when we were alive. That's because the color black is usually represented as a color of pain and misery, while a blizzard is one of those dangerous weathers where we really don't want to mess with, and if we do get stuck in one, it'll really feel like it takes forever to end, especially with the fact that blizzards can last up from hours to days. Now merging these two elements together, and what you get is a symbolic version of hell, a place of endless suffering where you're caught up in a storm that never ends. It's cold instead of fire, but the torment is just as insane. It's a prison of hopelessness where every second drags on and the environment itself feels hostile and punishing. So while Falling Up leads us to peace, Black Blizzard is its dark mirror and a descent into a hellish eternal storm. And while Black Blizzard can represent the bad ending, XO can actually be interpreted as a neutral ending where we did an equal number of good and bad and we really don't have anywhere to go. So we're now just a ghost wandering around in our world where nothing really notable happened and you're just kinda there. Being represented by the black and white color scheme this level has, where black and white is really a dull color. Now the song choice is actually interesting as it talks about our ex, and while you can't take this literally, I like to think it as us reminiscing the life we had as we now moved on from it, just like how a lot of us moved on from our ex. And in fact, we can also interpret the black and white color scheme as us going through some flashbacks, since flashbacks are usually represented in black and white. So in conclusion, the lore of KrmaL levels tells a story about life starting from our birth with Rearmed and ends on our death with Falling Up, Black Blizzard, and XO. And so that's my interpretation of how each KrmaL levels connect and make a story. Well, that's the end of the video. Did you agree or disagree with what I was trying to come up with? Maybe there's a series of levels that you want me to try and dissect. Let me know in the comments below if so. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe since I'm trying to hit 5k by the end of the year. Oh, and if you want to support me even further, you can commission me down at VGen, where you can commission a headshot, half body, full body, a banner, or a thumbnail. That's all I have for you today. I'll see you all later. Bye bye.